Okay, here's the review video for the test, or at least part of it. So we want to write the equation for these graphs. Assume no horizontal shifts. So what we need is A, B, and D. So I generally like to start with D, but obviously you can do A, B, and D. It doesn't matter. Okay, so remember the formula is y equals A sine or cosine bx plus c. You can tell who actually listens and who just watches. So it's sine or cosine that goes there. So D, it's your midline. If you can't figure out your midline, remember it's the max plus the min divided by 2. Don't forget that. So it's the middle. So it's what the line oscillates. So D would be 3. A is the amplitude from the midline. So from the midline up would be 2. Okay, here's where we decide if it's sine or cosine, and if there's been a reflection. So this is starting at the midline, so it's sine. The B is how many times the graph repeats between 0 and 2 pi. Well, I can actually see 2 pi right here, so that's good. So it's actually half of the graph. Remember, a sine is a mountain and a valley. Here the sine goes up also, so that's why I kept it positive. But there's only a mountain between 0 and 2 pi, so that means B is a half. So it's y equals A sine B x, or theta, plus C. Or D, excuse me, plus D. All right, so looking at this next one here, we have a curve right here. We can assume this is the max and this is the min, so the midline would be right in between them. So D would be here. If you can't figure it out, again, use the formula, max plus the min divided by 2. So this would be at 3. Amplitude is how high it goes from the midline, so again, that's 2. The B is how many times the graph repeats between 0 and 2 pi, but it does help if I know it's sine or cosine. So at this point, you see the midline. On the midline, it doesn't exist, but it starts at the minimum, so that would be cosine, and would make A negative. Right, B is how many times it repeats. So remember, with cosine, if it starts at the min, it should end at the min. So we're missing half of the graph here. So again, B would be half. So these are almost exactly the same graph, but one is sine, one is cosine, and there has been a reflection. So it's negative 2 cosine bx plus d. Right, over here, number 3, we look at this. Find the midline. So 2 is the max, negative 2 is the min, so the midline is right on the x-axis, so our D would be 0. Our A is how high it goes from the midline, so that would be 2 again. And how many times the graph repeats between 0 and 2 pi. Well, in this case, it's not very obvious. I have half the graph between 0 and pi over 2. So I guess between negative pi over 2 and pi over 2, there is a full graph. So this is half pi. This is another half of pi. So that's the period is just plain old pi. So to figure out the B, you set 2 pi over B equal to your pi. Cross multiply. Pi B equals 2 pi divided by pi, and B is 2. Sorry, I've already assumed it's, well, you can assume what it is, but you see here, it's at the midline on the y-axis. It's at negative 2, which would be the minimum. So that would make this negative and make it cosine. So y equals, I need a space for this, A cosine bx plus d. There is no d, so I'm just going to get rid of that. 2. That's a 2. Okay, for this one here, Lots of cosines, I guess. Find the midline. Again, use the formula if you don't know. It's at 1. A is the distance from the midline up to the maximum, so that would be 2. Then our sine or cosine, this is cosine because it starts at the max. Make sure this A is positive. And then B is the number of times the graph repeats between 0 and 2 pi. Again, not as obvious as I want it to be. For here, it goes from, well, if it's cosine, it starts at the max, goes to the max. So I have one cosine curve between 0 and pi over 2. So that means the period is pi over 2. So you can figure it out this way, or you can just see that this is 1, so this is 2, between 0 and pi, so there's going to be 4 between 0 and 2 pi. But, you know, do it this way. B is 4. Then y equals A cosine bx plus d. Moving on to the next problem. We want to write an equation given the information. So same idea, but this one might have a horizontal shift, but it doesn't say there is, so it doesn't look like it. So we want to write it in terms of sine. So here we want to use our, again, I just like doing the same thing over and over, so we're just dabbing it again. And see if it's necessary, if there's a left or right. If there isn't left or right, then we don't have to worry about it. Okay, so D, max plus the min divided by 2. So that would be -1. A, max minus the min. So we do one with that you actually have to remember your signs. So, you know, minus a negative, this is where the most common place to mess up is, so expect it. Okay, and then the period of a half. So with period, that's related to b, because 2 pi over b is equal to 1/2. 4 pi is equal to b. Oh, that's it, it's 4 pi. So the equation is, I didn't leave myself room. Sorry, I'm just going to erase this. So the equation is y equals A, talking sine, B, x, make sure you put the angle, plus D. Same deal with this one. We need our information. D is the max plus the min divided by 2. Oh wait, did this one, hold on. Did it say it had a reflection? No, okay, sorry. I'm just checking. This is doing these on the fly here. A is the max minus the min divided by 2. So again, we got another 4. And B, we have to use our period. So 2 pi over B is equal to 2 pi. So B is 1. Okay, there's been no reflection. It doesn't say. We want to write it in terms of cosine, so that means A is positive. And that's good. Okay, another one of basically the same thing. Write an equation in terms of cosine. Okay, max of, so we want cosine. So, okay, so max is 9 plus the min divided by 2. So that's 8 over 2 or 4. So this one, max minus the min divided by 2. So that's 10 over 2 or 5. Doesn't say there's a reflection, so it just stays positive 5. And a period of 1/5. So 2 pi over b equals 1/5. Cross multiply, you get 10 pi equals b. It's easy enough. So then it's cosine, so it's y equals 5 cosine b x plus d. Didn't do any reflections. Interesting. Sine, so we want the same things. So max plus the min divided by 2. Negative 10 over 2, or negative 5. And then the max, the max minus the min divided by 2, max minus the min divided by 2, so that would be 6 or 3. And then b, the period is 12, so 2 pi over b is equal to 12. So 12b equals 2 pi divided by 12. And b is pi over 6. Then writing the equation, you want to write it in terms of sign. I'm just going to change the color so you can see it. Y equals a sine bx plus d. I say plus d, but it's whatever the sine of d. So we want the range. Remember, the only two things that affects the range are the a and the d. So the range is the max and the min. Like this. So we put the max and the min in there. Min here, max here. Always has to be in that order. So it's positive 3 plus 1 and negative 3 plus 1. The order that you do it doesn't make any difference. It's just the only thing that changes the sign is the amplitude. Because remember, the amplitude is the thing that goes up and down, and then the vertical shift shifts you up. So there's the answer, negative 2 to 4. Make sure you put it low to high. 10 max is 2 minus 3. Min is negative 2 minus 3. So this is negative 1 to negative 5. So negative 5 is the min, negative 1 is the max. If you want to do min first, maybe just remember that the lowest one must go first. So max, min, max positive, min negative. Doesn't matter what the sign of A is, it's always the max. Positive plus the D, negative plus the D. Okay, this one here, same deal. That's a colon. So it's positive 7 and negative 7. So it's 2 and negative 12. So negative 12 goes first, and then the 2. Okay, we started talking about these with the word problems. You have to look at a regular graph, so the best idea is to graph it in your graphing calculator and see what cosine does. If you remember cosine, this is cosine. The period of cosine is 2 pi, so this is 2 pi, so this is pi. It hits the midline at, not very accurate of a graph here, but hit the midline at pi over 2 and 3 pi over 2. So then you just look at the graph. As the angle increases from pi over 2, that's here, to pi, what does the cosine graph do? So from here to here, it's going down, so it's decreasing. That's all you have to do. Look at the graph and state if it's increasing or decreasing. It's a bit of review. We've done this kind of thing before, but you just have to do it with a sine and cosine graph. So we're talking about a sine graph. So graph it in your calculator. And remember that this slash here over here is 2 pi. This one in the middle is pi. The max and the min values are at pi over 2 and 3 pi over 2. Okay, so as the angle increases from 0 to pi, so 0 to pi, the graph is going up and then down. Okay, it increases, then decreases. That's it. Pretty straightforward. As the angle increases from pi over 2 to 2 pi in the sine graph. So same sine graph. So pi, this is 2 pi. So it's decreasing, then it's increasing. Then increasing. As the angle increases from pi to 2 pi, we're talking about cosine now. So cosine starts at the max, ends at the max. But the same pieces, this is 2 pi, this is pi. So from pi to 2 pi, cosine just increases. Horizontal shift. So this is the deepness of our horizontal shift work that we have to be able to look at here and be able to tell what the horizontal shift is. So the horizontal shift, remember it's always opposite sign, so this is positive, so it is going to be negative. This is considered an any. The x and the 2 are both inside of the parentheses, so I have to divide. It's just the way it is. So that's the horizontal shift. It's -2, or you could also say it left 2. It means the same thing. Okay. So over here, again, we have an any, so that means that this changes its sign, and we divide. So you can either say positive pi over 5, or to the right, pi over 5. Both of these are outside, so as you can see, the x and the 3 are not connected. They are disconnected by the parentheses, so this makes this one a lot easier. You just take -pi, or you say to the left pi. Same deal with this one. The 2 is not connected to the x directly, so it's +4 or to the right 4.